everybody, it's Melissa at CIM. We're going to get started on the webinar, and it is being recorded, so those that may show up late or couldn't attend will be able to get a hold of it after this webinar. We'll pause occasionally to ask questions. Since it is in the webinar mode, you won't be able to speak until we enable you to speak on this end. So we're just going to go ahead and get started. So what this webinar is about is we would like you guys to play with the release that we currently have that are testing locally here, and would like your feedback on if you're noticing anything that we consider done that are issues on your end. So it's kind of a way for you to get access to it earlier, be able to play with it, find out if there's any glaring issues that you see, or things that just won't work, or maybe suggestions as to how to make it better, you know, whatever feedback you may have. So we've created this document, this Compass Testing Feedback document, which has the features we want to focus on, which we're going to go through today and show you in the application how that works, as well as other new features, which if you have time, feel free to look at that, but that's not the main focus of what this purpose is. Those are more kind of what we feel are in the bag and known, and you know, not anything too intense that would need extra eyes on it. And then we have a known issues tab, and it's very important to look at that. You are going to find bugs in this release. It's not done, it's not ready, and that's a list of the things that we know about that are going to error or have problems with that you'll want to avoid, and don't report that to us because we already are well aware of that and are working on fixing it here now. And then finally, the feedback tab is where we would like you to record your feedback to send back. We would prefer that each agency creates one feedback form and collaborates to do that, to send back. And we're hoping to get that back from you by end of business on April 30th. We're planning to turn off the outside access to our QA database at that time. So please, you know, if you have moments to spare and want to go in there. The other thing I want to warn you all about is it is a production copy. So what that means is you will log in to this site with your regular credentials, because it's literally a copy, and it will look like your caseloads for sports graders will look like your same caseloads, but as of a date and time, which honestly I don't even know what the date and time is. You know, it could be January, I'm not sure, somewhere around that. So it's a few months ago. You'll see overdue to do items and things like that in there, which are fine because it's not in production mode. But I want to warn you that don't accidentally make changes that you think you're doing in production in this little QA release, because it will go nowhere in the real world. The data is going to get dumped in our next release. So you will want to make sure that you're in the right place, because they will look exactly the same, except for that the copy that we're sending you it'll be a different link, obviously, but it'll be older data. So that will be your first key clue. You know, when you log in and get the dashboard, like, wait, why is everything overdue? Well, that's why. So, but that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get started then in showing you these features that we are adding. And so the first couple things are part of the participant record. So we've added a couple new questions. How do you prefer to be addressed in communication support needs? These are stemming from the new nifty community transition assessment, and we thought that this would be helpful for anyone. So in the new record, underneath the title, you'll have a new how do you prefer to be addressed, where you'd put their nicknames. So that will print on the PCSP report if you put something in there. If you don't, then it won't print on the report as blank. And then there's a new communication support needs question down here to indicate if they need an interpreter, devices, sign language, etc. We just, you know, put a blank thing in there for demonstration purposes of generic text, but that's where you could record that information. So those have been added. We also, in section A of the assessment, we've added the About Me question. This one we've talked about as part of the PCSP workshops. And what that was is to cover the parts of the managed care regulations that require you to indicate the person's strengths, their desires, etc. And that is found right here. So strengths, abilities, desires, choices, interests, etc. So anything they want to tell you about themselves is recorded there. So it's right above the person's expressed goals of care that you're used to seeing today. So that's been added, and that will also print on the plan of care report. This talks about Section C, informal support. You're going to see data in there right now, but don't touch that data because it needs to be removed of that primary and secondary helper data because it's going to be backfilled from the caregivers section in the future, but right now it's still showing in the Section C. So once we get, farther along, we're going to flex those fields out. But right now you are going to see them there. They will not be there when we go to production. But everything will be controlled by caregivers. So that's one of the major changes, is to reduce the paperwork in what you're recording double entry places. So now caregivers is going to control the Section C primary and secondary helpers. So it's going to just do it behind the scenes as you're making changes. So, and you won't see it, but it will be exported to the state properly for the data warehouse purposes and for all the NRI algorithms that those fields need to be there. So that's why we have to backfill it. Caregivers. So we've added the questions to the caregivers that were missing that were part of Section C, and that includes the areas of informal help, the if needed willingness questions. We've also added a copy to informal interventions feature, which I'll show you in a second, and added 3 new fiscal intermediate, I can't speak, I'm just going to let you read that word, those 3 that are listed there, so that if any of you are using them and want to record them in there, you can. We removed the primary contact. That was removed due to, oh my goodness, you can't see my screen. Thank you for calling. I apologize. Okay, so let me go back for a second. So I told you all that. This is why webinars aren't very fun. So Minnie Mouse here is my person. This is the communication supports needs, that question that I told you about already. Interpreter, devices, etc. And up here under title, how do you prefer to be addressed? Sorry about that. And then the about me question in section A is right here. And so far I haven't shown you anything else in the app besides what's on that sheet that is the features to focus on sheet, which I've been looking at here. So that's all I've been going through. So the primary contact got removed because it was confusing, because we've got the preferred communication and we've got primary helper, and so that was removed as a request on the PCFP workshops. We also merged the frequency, duration, task field into one field, so I'll show you that in a second. We also changed the question about do they want to receive a copy of the backup plan to include and person-centered service plan. And then you will notice that the conversions have been done for copying caregiver information into the caregiver information and the informal support Section C information have been converted, the methods that we talked about on the Compass design call. So that talks about that. And then community support systems are right here. It's the same type of things have been done there, and I'll go show you that now in the system. So caregivers is here, and we've got the, I gotta get some stuff out of my way that you can't see. But this is where you have this information. So we've added the questions in here, down here of the Section C questions that were missing before. This is where we've merged the frequency and duration and tasks, and then the new question to add that extra text. I do want you to notice up here at the top, there's the copy to informal interventions, and that copy to informal interventions button is disabled right now because I already copied her. But if I click on Bob Smith, you see that it's lit up. And so what that means is you can see on the caregiver summary here of who you've copied to your PCSP. So you will not have to re-enter your caregiver information as informal interventions if they are supposed to be part of the plan of care. They will automatically show up in the informal section for caregivers and community supports for that matter down here. So when you copy it down, it copies everything in here. All you have to do is select the issues that are going to be addressed, which I've already selected, and it already has the provider phone number and the tasks done for you. And so put the start date The start date automatically will copy down as of today's date. I'm asking for confirmation here. I didn't test this very thoroughly myself. So anyway, so it'll do it as of today's date when you do the copy button. And you can change it if that's not correct, but that's the default because that is part of the key on the records. We had to put something there. But you can change it if that's not the correct start date. So that automatically does that for both the caregivers and the community supports, which this was the informal supports, and we renamed that to be a little more clear so that it doesn't get confused with the Section C informal support section. So, but otherwise this remains a lot the same except for we merge those and we have the copy as well if they need to be copied to an informal intervention so that you don't have to retype any of this information. Okay. So those are fairly simple. And then the medical providers, it's similar things. The one thing we did add is we added the copy to PCSP, and you can do that while in edit mode. There is, the providers have changed underneath the hood to be merged into the one list. And so that's used here, and we fixed this reference to pull the medical providers on the new merged list, which I'll show you in a bit here. But you can also copy these to the PCSP if you need to. So if that medical provider is supposed to be part of their plan, then you would copy them. If not, you don't need to. It will copy to the plan as a primary care physician. So it'll automatically do that for you. We've also added an additional descriptor. This is where you may want to indicate if they're like an oncologist or a specialty type name, if you're going to be adding them to the plan, because additional descriptor is part of arranged services now. It's a new field we've added, arranged interventions, I should say, not services, but arranged intervention. And that allows you to have multiple medical providers if you need to have them as part of the plan. So you would want to add additional descriptors if you're planning on copying multiple there. Otherwise, this is not a required field. You do not need to go fill them in for everybody. It's only if you need to add multiple medical providers to the plan of care that you would need that, or if you want it as your own indicator so that you know right up top that, oh, this guy is the oncologist, or like I said, whatever, the podiatrist, etc. You could do that for. So, and then I'll just flip to the arranged here so you can see in here there is the new additional descriptor field. Okay, so we had added hospice in here, but you have a new list. I'm kind of skipping around from my regular list, but there are some new things in here for palliative care, independent living services, other physicians from the non-primaries, and you'll have primary physician for those that you said yes, that they're primary and the medical provider will show up there. So this is the new arranged. Now, also we have the provider type. This is just to help make that list shorter by picking which kind that they are. So it knows to say, give me the arranged providers, the medical pharmacy, DME. They are all in one list behind the scenes, but those are little check boxes on the provider that show you what type that they fall in the categories of. So all that really does is limit this list to show you fewer providers in there, and it copies then in the provider phone like it does now. So there's that. So medical providers, I'm going to go ahead and do that copy to PCSP because it's not been done already, just to show you how this works. So I click this little icon, and it's going to take me to my new arranged intervention. Okay, so additional descriptor is grayed out because I did not fill it in the medical provider record. If I go and put that in the medical provider, it will show here automatically. Same thing with frequency and tasks. That they don't have that. So this here, you just select your issues, etc. It already has the provider, James Feelgood, Dr. Feelgood, for those of you Motley Crue fans from back in the day. So medical provider automatically fills in because that was the medical provider I had chosen in the actual medical provider section. And then today's date is the start date. So that's how that works. And then you know that you copied it because in all of the summaries, we show that it's been copied to the PCSP and where it got copied to. So if that's blank, then you haven't done that. If it's filled in, then you know. Okay. Pharmacies works the exact same way. If for some reason the pharmacy is part of the plan of care, it's probably rare, but I'm sure it happens. It could be that, you know, you've got a special program going on that pharmacies are integrated into this all. Then that will work the same way. I have a note being slid to me across the room. If you had filled in the assessment date up in the next assessment, then it's going to use that as your start date on these interventions when you copy, just so to be clear. If you don't have a next assessment date, it uses today's date. If you have the next assessment date that you're already working on it, it will use the assessment date. Thank you. Okay. Durable medical equipment is a little bit different in that durable medical equipment, when it's copied to the PCSP, it could be copied to purchased waiver, purchased other, or arranged, any one of those. So it's fairly smart and asks you about that. So let me pull this guy up. And let's say that the hospital bed, I want to put that in the plan because I want to make sure the maintenance on that is happening. So I'm going to copy that to the PCSP, and it's going to prompt me for which type of intervention. Is it an arranged, purchased waiver, or purchased other? So then you select which one, you click the copy, and then it's going to take you into your arranged intervention, where then you can indicate the description, select what issues is that doing. It automatically fills in your DME provider of J&B Medical, and my start date is 4/23 because I don't have a next assessment. So it already does that for you, and it prompts that, but you cannot copy this to another part. So you can't copy the hospital bed now to the purchase waiver. It can only be to the one. If you, the other thing too is you cannot copy multiple to purchase waiver or purchased other because they go under a generic category of specialized medical equipment and supplies. And so that you can only do one, and then you would have to, in that intervention, let's just do this quick so you can see what I'm talking about. So if I say that we're purchasing the brace, okay, so I'm going to say purchasing, I don't have a provider for that one, but okay, oh well. So see how it comes under specialized medical equipment and supplies? There is no other indicators for purchase because we handle all of the specifics in the care plans and the service orders. And since we handle it there right now until we get a more fully integrated system that, you know, with 4.0, we cannot dive down into that in this plan. So it comes in generically. You don't even know which one unless you go back to your DME and you can see here that you copied the brace to the PCSP for purchase waiver. So you would need to, you only indicate what was purchased for that period. It's during a specific start-stop date. So if you're initially setting stuff up and going to order a bunch of DME, then you would want to, then they'll all be covered under one. But if later you add one thing at a time, then of course those are different start-stop dates and can be added as separate interventions because they cover a different period. I hope that makes sense. So that one's a little different than anything else. Let me go back to here because I've skipped around a little bit. I think I've covered all of these. Oh, the durable medical equipment, I forgot that we even changed this to a data grid, so that's new to you. It used to be the list on the left panel, and you guys had asked us to turn that into a grid like medications and medical providers are, so we did do that. And this talks about what I just talked about. You're only allowed one. So goals, we removed the goal is important for me question at your guys' request. We've added that additional descriptor to the arranged. We added, these are the new interventions that we've added for arranged. The new provider types. We changed service provider to arranged provider so that for our lists, it works in the main merged list. We removed frequency on arranged because you guys didn't know that, and it can be put into the description field if you know it. And we removed these three types because those are technically medical providers, and so they would go under other physician in that way. So that's why those are not there anymore. And you can have multiples of arranged interventions if you have different additional descriptors. So that's why we added that additional descriptor field in, because the combination of both the intervention, which is like palliative care, or independent living services, and then if you indicate in the additional descriptor a more specific thing, then you can add another independent living service with a different additional descriptor and so on in arranged intervention. So it allows for a little more flexibility there. Informal interventions, we converted anybody that had caregiver community support selected in the provider drop-down, so that'll be showing in your new one for all your existing people. We added the that you have to now select the provider type when you add one, if you add one manually, which you still can if you want to, but it's going to prompt you for the same caregiver that's up above, so it's easier to click the copy button than it is just to add one. Let me just show you what I mean by that, because that doesn't make quite sense. So here, I can go in here, add, choose caregiver community support, but then it's going to prompt me for which one. So I could add Bob and choose my start date. And behind the scenes, it's actually going to also say it's still copied over here when you do that, because we know it got copied technically, and so we can relate them to each other. We did that behind the scenes to make it easier on you guys. But you can do it either way. You can use the copy and copy them down, or you can add them here and it's still considered a copy and you're still managing it from this data up here, if that makes sense. It'll make more sense as you use it. We removed the intervention description in here because it should be in the tasks field. And then they're all read-only in here because you deal with them in the caregiver community support record, except for issues addressed, where that's where you select the issues that it's addressing. So self-intervention, that's a brand new thing we've added. And we converted anybody whose first and last name had been converted to self. But self looks like this. It's right here. And so you type in a text. So it's similar to the informal where you typed in in text. So you're going to want to, when you first get in here, it's going to have the person's name as the intervention. So you'll want to change that to what it actually is. And then update the intervention description. And then select the issues, etc. But it's pretty simple little area to collect any self-interventions that may occur that need to be on the plan. And purchased, except sports coordination, intervention description is gone because it's dealt with in really in the service authorization area. We also removed that auto text that came up before that said that, what's shown there on the screen. So that doesn't happen. You have to manually type it in. We added a few fields at the request of the waiver directors about if they want a copy mailed to the primary care physician or other physician, and if yes, who, along with the memo field has been changed to be 3,800 for the sports coordination intervention description. So those of you that have a lot of things that you're monitoring, you now can fit a lot more text in there. We also merged NMT and NEMT interventions to the new community transportation. We changed the sports coordination questions for the number of days. We converted what we could if they were numbers. If they weren't, they're blanked out, and you'll need to re-enter them on the next time you do it. But that's changed there, as well as adding the PCP meeting to be working with that, I should say. What's this one? Oh, that's the clearing out, yeah. So we did add a new progress note for PCSP or PCP meetings. So when you add a progress note now, you'll have another option in the list for PCP meeting. And this is what's going to control that the PCP meeting to-do item, which is new too, has been completed. So you will need to use that type of note in order for it to get to reset that due date on the PCP meeting to-do item. So if we look at our to-do items over here, you're going to see one of the things too is it's no longer a 30-day contact, it's a monitoring contact because it may not be 30 days. But person-centered planning meeting is the new due date one, and these are all controlled now by that support coordination intervention, and that, which I'm not showing right now. I thought I put one in. I did. We have a bug, and we can't do it in our other regular QA, but in this instance that I set up for demo purposes, it's buggy. So let us know if you run into that too, because we're not seeing it now, but it's somehow like disappearing, but it's really there. I don't know what causes it. So there they are. So there's my sports coordination. So I typed that's from the old stuff that won't pre-fill anymore, but your existing ones will have that text still in there. So you've got your communications. These are controlling those to-do items if they're present. If they're not present in either purchase waiver or purchased other, we're using the defaults. So for the how often should they contact you will be 30 days, and the how often should they assess you will be based on the open status interval, and the person-centered planning meeting will be 180 days. So you can change these to be whatever you want, except for there are the min and maxes of what the state decided to allow for those that are documented. And then here's your new questions down below that we just talked about that are added for you to fill in on your next review of the PERT plan. So agent-specific data. So let's go show you the provider list. So let me navigate this down. So agent-specific data, if you have access to this, it's under agent providers. We converted people that had the new arranged providers to the new agent providers, and anybody that had medical providers access or DME or pharmacy providers only, and they didn't have the arranged one as well, they will not have access to it. It won't show up here. So if you get in here, you can't see this under agent-specific data because you don't have the permissions to. Technically, because of the permissions in your agency, your regular person that manages your permissions could go in and give you that access. You don't have to contact us to do that, but that's where that set it comes from. So we have a list now, one list. So CVS Pharmacy I added in here, and it's active. So we now have the active indicator. So if you choose inactive, eventually, it's not in this release because it's a known issue, eventually that will not show up in your drop downs anymore, so that you can get rid of all the ones that are no longer active, but keep them in the list for all your past history of data that did use them. So that's going to be nice. And then you can select multiple provider types if they apply to multiple provider types. So I'm calling the pharmacy an arranged provider and a pharmacy. You know, if whatever you want us to check there that applies, and then otherwise these now all have the same fields. So certain things won't apply, like the credentials don't apply to a pharmacy. It's for medical providers only. If you want to choose served counties, these came from the arranged provider list. If you can, if you want to, but you don't. Same thing with provider services. That's meant for arranged only, and then there's the notes field. So they all have the same fields, but they'll have different information in them. So this is the hospice is my arranged provider. I got J&B Medical for the DME provider and arranged provider, et cetera. So they will merge. You'll be able to see your new list in here when you log in if you have the permission added. Let's see. Include in PCSP questions. We made a change that you guys will love, that if you previously had them included on the PCSP for that section. So what I'm talking about is if we go back to my person mini, maybe if I hit enter, there we go. This one's slower. That's the other thing. You'll notice it's very slow. That's how you'll know you're in our testing area too versus production. Slow equals not live. So in here in like section of the SW, if, let's see, I want to choose that. Let's try environmental. Maybe she's got. So this include on PCSP at the end, I said yes. If you change that to no issues identified and it's legit because you had to have nothing not normal up here, you know, if you change things, it's going to then prompt you to say, do you want to remove, if you do this, you're going to remove the issues from the plan of care. And if you say yes, it's going to remove, it's going to unselect those issues that are in your interventions and goals automatically, okay, because it disappears off of there. So if I had done that, then the environmental is going to be unselected and it won't show up anymore here automatically. But it's going to prompt you to do that. So if you don't want to, then you can click cancel or you click continue to move on. So that's going to be a faster feature instead of you having to go into all the goals and all the interventions that use the environmental as an issue. Then you'd have to unclick them all and then go change it to no issues identified, okay, if and when that happens. But I know it's happened because it was you guys requested us to add it. So. We also added a new report for quality assurance, the full one that was requested. So it's going to show all the not normal fields, not just sections that were not included on the PCSP. Right now, the limited one includes only the ones that you said no, don't include on the PCSP, and the new full one shows everything. So if we look at her under the reports menu, there's the new full, and you click that, and you're going to see every section regardless of what was said on including PCSP and show the not normal fields if they apply. So it's basically showing you everything to check documentation for quality purposes. Your quality managers are going to probably be looking at this. And then otherwise, the same one you have now is now called the limited, the LTD version. Another thing, you're going to see the PCSP issues report in here. It's broke, don't run it. It shouldn't be in the list. We're going to get rid of that soon. But that's your old report that just hasn't been removed. The new report is simply called PCP report. And I may as well go and show you that now. This is the exciting part. I love this report. Just saying, I hope you do too. So it starts the same like your current one. It has the identifiers at the top. We then show the preferred method of communication if there is one. Your sports coordinators, it's laid out a little different. The About Me includes the I prefer to be addressed as well as its own About Me question. We just put them together because this on its own was really goofy looking in the report, so we just threw it in the box. So that's really why it's in the same box. But communication support needs will print if they're filled in. So if they're not, these aren't filled in, they're not going to print on the report. So if you guys don't see them on your report, go check the fields to make sure that you filled in any data there for them to show up. Express goals of care will print. Then all of your communication plan questions, including the other preferences for communication are. Following physicians will receive a copy of the person-centered service plan report, so we put that on here as well. So anybody that you said should receive a copy will be on the plan. These tasks I can perform are the self-interventions that they agree to do, along with that start and stop date. Your informal supports, so your caregivers are going to show here. Your community supports are going to show underneath with this information. Pulling through. You've got your arranged services that you've put into the arranged interventions, the type of service. If you have an additional descriptor, which hospital bed, the item name becomes an additional descriptor automatically, will print right after the name. The service description, if that was filled in, and the providers and phone numbers, etc. Then it lists your My Choice services in your home. It would also, if you had other services, purchase services in your home, that would list as another section. If you don't have any data in these sections, that section's not going to print. So if, for instance, that person has no arranged, then you're not going to see the arranged boxes. It's just not going to show up. So we try to make this report as small as we can based on the data that you provide. So these are the 4 My Choice services that we put in. They had no preferences, because remember, the preferences are still mostly in your service authorizations, not in here. But if they had preferences that didn't really apply to the service auth, that do apply here, then you could fill that in on the plan. And then it starts into what their issues and goals are, and it's grouped by the category. So social, cognitive, function, clinical, yeah. So social, it shows the issue. So this is the section without the section letter. So this is actually section D, of course. And this is the issue that you typed into the section. So these should be short and to the point. The goal was emergency help. And it was important to me, so it does the less important, more important, or just important. The desired outcome, and then the following people and services will help me achieve my goals. And so how this is put together is these community living supports and Maria said the issue selected was environmental assessment. This goal had environmental assessment selected, so we print them all together on the report to put them all into one. And so then the next one following is the next section that applies, and transportation to attend church weekly. Community inclusion is the goal because they want to attend church on Sundays, and so we put in some community transportation for that. Then it switches to the next section if there's no more issues in that section, and he lists the goals for those, et cetera, et cetera. Now, this will get long if you have way lots of goals to way lots of issues, or the vice versa on the interventions. So you kind of want to be choosy as to what really applies and manage them under one issue. That was the whole thing we talked about. When you have issues in a section, you may want to say this is addressed in the other section because they relate to one another for the issue it is. And try, play with the report to see what it's going to look like. You also want to make sure that you don't put acronyms on these reports, because acronyms are not allowed for the person-centered service plan report. So make sure when you're doing the text for the goals and the issues that you're not putting, PT for the participant or PCT or any like SOB. The client may read that a whole different way than what it actually means. So you're going to need to spell all those things out if they're printed on this report, which will be your issues in the assessment sections, your goals, your desired outcomes, yeah, that's pretty much it. And you can see we're printing it all out, UCCLS in the system, and we're spelling it all out on here now in the new version. So this is an example of the physical function, their tasks they can perform. So the self-intervention of managed self-care is one of the services and people that will achieve goals. So that does print there too. So this goes on, and then the summary is another actual thing for their RN and social worker summaries when that applies. And then we also print other goals, and this is for goals that you did not select an issue addressed for. So this could indicate an issue, bad word, but a problem that you need to go add an issue to this goal. But there's possibilities it couldn't. So we wanted to make sure it was printed on the report in case it got missed, or in case on purpose it doesn't address an issue. It's just a goal they have independent of an issue. So it could be fine. And then you've got your traditional signature page. One other thing I just forgot to tell you, I'm remembering right now. I thought I had an example. Or maybe not. I guess not. There will print, if you didn't put any interventions in for a issue, it will print down here, to be determined. So you're going to want to look for the to be determined text to make sure that you don't have that. And it will also be indicative on the interventions if you have missing. See, I don't have missing anymore. I must have added the one that was missing. If you have missing interventions showing up here, or missing issues, missing interventions for the issue, then that will be the first indicator of problem. The second problem will be, it'll say to be determined down here if you didn't add any interventions for an issue. So it doesn't just print nothing, it does that extra piece, so it's kind of an indicator to you. The other thing I want to show you is that at any time that you want to get a print out of that plan of care with your signatures on it for getting a new signature from the client in between assessments, like for your PCP meetings, when you check these boxes, for demonstration purposes, I don't care, and then run the report, then they will print on that last page. So Harry Hopkins on this date electronically signed it, and it pulls your credentials from your user account. So it will print that on there for you anytime. Right now in the system, you can't check these boxes when there's no assessment date, and we've changed that. So you can now check these as complete, both the SW and RN, or if it's the same person on a PCP meeting, that's fine, just like this. It will handle that. And then when you need to edit it possibly again, you just uncheck them both again to make for future updates. The other thing that's going to happen behind the scenes on these is when you check both of these boxes, it's going to send a notice to your vendors that there was the PCBSP has been updated automatically. So anytime you want the signatures to print or you want the vendors to receive a copy, then when these two guys are completed, it sends the notice. Okay? I'll go back. You won't be able to see that in your focus on, but I just want to let you know that that's there and how you get those signatures on there. So yes, the PCSP report we have a lot of changes to that. It's a whole new format. So we would love more input on that. So other new features are listed over here. These are more of things that, you know, we changed text 30-day due to monitoring contacts. The key display has this information on it, and these removed, participant detail. So these are a bunch of other things that I'm not going to go over on this call. We'll be going over the full extent of all of the release on a future webinar when we do the actual release. But just so you know, those are also included. And then the known issues tab. So we talked about earlier, the primary and secondary helper information isn't flexed out yet of Section C. It will be, so don't play with that. It won't do anything that you expect it to do. It will change it. It just won't be right anymore. So ignore that. Medical providers, the report errors actually for medical providers, pharmacies, and DME, if you run that, because we haven't updated the link to the new agent provider area so that the provider part can print. We also still have inactive providers showing in those drop-downs in those sections, so that will happen. And then if you click the little blue quote bubble that shows up, there'll be the pop-up won't show field names next to things. It'll just show some random numbers that you don't know what that means. But we'll be fixing that too to show exactly what that is. Arranged interventions, you can't select a provider type. So you could add one, but you can't put a provider into it. So we suggest that you use existing arranged interventions you have on people to be able to check the PCSP report out. Because if you put it in and try to do it, then you can't add interventions to that person anymore, and it gets all messed up. So I wouldn't click to try to do a provider type right now. This is also a place that the little quote bubble's all messed up. The informal interventions, I don't know if you noticed when I showed you that there was actually two pop-ups, one's in the front and one's in the background. And so the second one in the background shouldn't be showing up, but it is for some reason. So we're fixing that. There's also two no selection options in that provider drop-down that we'll be getting rid of. In the self-interventions, if you have more than 4 in there, which I don't know if you ever have it, but it's not displaying them all. You have to click the more button, so we're going to get rid of that more, so it's not more clicks to deal with getting them all, because there shouldn't be that many to begin with, but if there are, then you won't have to deal with that. We have on the next dashboard, if you do the complete checkbox on the to-do item, then it's going to take you to a standard progress note instead of the PCP meeting one, so that's bad that we're fixing. We have some word wrapping issues on the report, so we're going to get rid of that. Other provider type isn't showing the provider name, and that's in arranged interventions, yeah. And then that PCSP issues report is still there and shouldn't be. It'll error if you try to run it. We also, the progress notes report, for some reason, the date format changed on it, so it's all goofy looking, so we're going to be fixing that. And you're unable to add new progress notes from the participant summary, that little summary that shows up when you double click a person in the to-do item list or somewhere else in the Compass Next area, that you can't add it from there. It gives you an error that it's a duplicate, and it's not a duplicate, and it didn't have one and never added one, so we're fixing that. And right now you cannot add new agent providers to the list. So you'll have your converted list sitting there, but you won't be able to add anybody else to that list, unfortunately, to play with new stuff. But you can play with what you've got already loaded. Okay. So the feedback form is here. Jackie put this together for you to have. They have drop-downs throughout, so we please use these drop-downs so we have consistent data where it's needed. Like reporter doesn't have one because we don't know all the people that possibly could be reporting, but the type, so there's a list of it's a bug, a request, or other. If it apply, which section does it apply to? Is it assessments, or is it a specific area, et cetera? So that just helps us know where you're at. Type in the description. If there's errors that pop up, put the text of the error here. Which browser you used, list here to pick that. The time it occurred, because that will help us look at the errors in the background. So please pay attention to that, because if you do errors, we need that. If you provide us a screenshot, yes or no, through the secure file exchange, probably if it has client data on it, and any other information you want to provide. So we'd like this filled out and sent back to us on the 30th. And as for 1 per agency is what we're asking for. I want to just make sure I've gone through what I plan to go through. Yeah, that part. The other thing we sent out to you is a release status. This is an addition to those known issues for some of them. Some things do duplicate between the two lists, and we didn't feel like cleaning it up because it's better to have it in two places than in no places, so we left it. But these are all the things that have been done so far or not done. If you don't see done, it's not. And so if you want to make sure that you look at this list too, if you're thinking of a feature, or wouldn't it be nice if, this list will have the ones that we're still working on to do. And we've actually added, I think, a couple even more yesterday that did make it in the, we sent it out and we've added it since then. So we're still finding stuff in our testing that we're adding. So let us know of anything, suggestions, errors, et cetera, through that feedback document. And on the 30th, send that to us, and then we can deal with it then. All right, I'm going to take questions now. I see I have a bunch. Oh, yeah, can't see my screen. Yeah. If only I would have paid attention to that while I was talking, right? So if you have questions, you can type them in. The hand-raised ones, I'm going to put them all down at the moment. And if you want to talk, raise your hand again. I just reset it. Okay, I'm all cleaned up on my end. Let me see if you've got anything. Okay, I've got a question. When you check the PCSP boxes so the signatures show up and the vendors get a copy, does it create a copy in the participant record anywhere? I assume you mean the report or a progress note, one of the two. Either way, no. We don't archive any copies. We don't have any ability to do that currently. You could download it and attach it as a file if you want to, but it would just send a notice, and they would get, the vendors always get the current information, so they would just get the current information from that at all times off the notice. It wouldn't be, if they ran it later, it would give them the newest and latest anyway. So no, there is no function for that currently. Any other questions? Oh, I see one. Let's see. Oops, what did I just do? I'm special today. Okay. Letty, I've just enabled you to talk.
Okay. What date should be for the intervention dates? Should it be the actual date that the intervention started or the date of the assessment?
You mean when you're putting these in for the first time?
Yeah.
I mean, if you know the original date, you could put it in, but if you don't, I would put in the assessment date.
Okay. And
yeah, I don't think it's specified.
Okay, and for the goal review, what date should go there? Should it be the date of the assessment or the date of the that we're doing the assessment?
Oh, when you enter the goal review text?
Right, like the start date.
So the start date of the goal is when you assess them, because that's when they're telling you the goals, right?
All right. Okay.
The goals should be in their words.
Right.
Right. And then the goal review you would update as needed. Probably not initially, but on your PCP meeting.
Okay, so if we're continuing the goal, the date should remain the same as the same date that we actually started the goal?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And you just reminded me there's a whole other document I totally forgot about going over. Do you have any more questions before I mute you back up again?
No, that's fine. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Letty.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, so I forgot to go through this document. These are, I'm not going to read through it all, but the key in here is notable issues are the dots and action items released with release, not for testing. I mean, you could look at it, I guess, but these are more of the cleanup things that you're going to probably need to do potentially. as part of it. So this is another thing you could be looking at as part of this review to see if you have issues like this. But the thing that Letty was reminding about is the end of this goes through this date stuff again. We talked about this on the design call on how the interventions and goal start and stop dates aren't going to be automatically stopped when you finalize assessments anymore, like it was kind of haphazardly, not consistently. So this explains what that's going to do. So it would be nice if you want to play around with finalizing assessments and seeing how that interacts and making sure that's how you expect it to be now. And this is a little, example of what we expect to happen, and it should be happening. That's been done for a bit now. So, so let us know about that too. All right, I'm seeing. Okay, here's my, there. Showing up really tiny. Okay. Pause this out again. How did I do that? There we go. All right. Will we be able to work with the margin feature in demo or merging feature? Sorry, I can't read. To work with how the merging feature works. The merge actually is not done yet. That's one of the things we haven't finished on our end. But it will work exactly like it does today with medical providers, pharmacies, and DME providers, yes. Except we're going to be smarter now. And instead, right now how it works is you merge them, and then you have to go manually delete the one that you merged from, right? And that was very painful, and people didn't do it because they didn't know that it didn't do that on its own. So we're making it smart and going to have it delete the original that you merged from in the new version. So it'll work the same. It'll have the same exact feel to it. It just will delete the original provider so that you don't have to take that extra step and do that. All right, I don't have any other questions that have come in. I don't see any raised hands. I'll wait a couple seconds to see if there's any more questions. Okay. If the PCSP review done at 180 days has the goal review that are updated, then updated again at the next 180 days, will the original goal review be negated or saved somewhere? If you are doing the 180-day one, this may be one of those situations where you would want to download the report and attach it to the record. There will always be information of the changes over time in the audit logs. So if you do the history, you can see it, but there wouldn't be a report. Basically, anything you're going to get signed, you're going to want to have attached to the record. Some people in the past have talked about when they mailed it out to the participant to get signed, if they mailed it or they took it out, they would archive that and download and attach it to the record, and then replace it when they got the signed copy of the same thing, and then keep doing that, but keeping the old ones, of course, not deleting them, but just deleting the one that got signed. So that was a process that people were talking about doing in order to have that copy attached to the record itself, or you can also just keep that copy on paper as well. It's not required to be attached, it's just a recommendation, so it's easier for CCOR reviews and such. But yes, otherwise, when you update things, it does just replace that text with what it is. So that's up to you of how you guys want to manage that. Okay, I don't see any other questions coming in. So we're going to go ahead and end this webinar, and thank you, and we look forward to seeing your comments.